Hello again, everyone. Thanks for taking the time to meet with me again. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Steve Hicks. I am the Cybersecurity Practice Manager over here at Endsight, and today we're going to talk about the big three policies that you should have for your organization. First, let's talk about why do we have policies? You ever meet someone who works well in a crisis or makes decisions well under pressure? No, they don't. Nobody does. Humans are fallible and we make errors all the time, especially in emotionally challenging situations. You ever had your organization down or ever had some important part of your life down, like your network, your business, something hard? What's the number one request people give us when they're down? I'll give you a second to think about it. The same one everyone says: get back online. I'm losing money. Or in your home, I'm cold, whatever the case may be. The point is, I just got to be back up. But that can have implications in a cybersecurity business. Insurance claims, you have to follow their specific process. So just getting back online may invalidate that process. And if you just simply restore the backup, the way the bad guys got in, they're just going to get back in. That's why we have process, and this is part of the three tools: people, process, and technology. This is the process portion for these types of things. Ever had any regulatory or insurance requirements? They require these policies, written ones, not winging it ones, because winging it is not a disaster recovery strategy. So to address this, we've made this video about the three big policies you need. The first one is an acceptable use policy, something that's kept in an employee handbook that everybody signs, hopefully when they're hired and hopefully also annually where it's reviewed. This contains administrative policies that employees must abide by in our organizations. This differs from a technological setting. This is, don't do this or we'll fire you, rather than we've shut this off and you can't. Both are important. This time, acceptable use policy is what we're talking about. They have three parts, notably the big ones. What is acceptable and unacceptable using our technology, meaning you can't browse websites that are bad, but you can use Twitter, for example. What you can and can't do while representing the company, meaning no controversial Facebook posts on our account, but if you want to wear your company gear to your kid's Little League game, that's totally fine. And of course, the consequences for failing to comply. With this type of policy, employees know what's acceptable. And more importantly, they know that the organization cares about them, cares about keeping their paychecks flowing in the organization and business, and keeping them safe and secure. It is a good way to show employees that they matter, you're investing in them. It's also frequently required for lots of different things. The second policy is a backup and disaster recovery policy. Now, admittedly, in large organizations, these two policies are frequently not combined. They're separate. You have a backup policy, a business continuity policy, and a disaster recovery policy. But for the purposes of those watching this video, typically smaller and medium-sized organizations combine these into a single policy, and it's usually sufficient. A policy like this contains instructions on what to do in the event of a disaster, non-human caused. That's the third one. This is some kind of a natural disaster or some kind of a technological breakdown, not an attack. First of all, it contains those instructions. Second of all, it contains what we call a RACI matrix, a contact matrix of who knows what the landlord's name is and what the insurance policies are and who can make these decisions, who has which responsibilities, and frequently who can actually spend money in this disaster. One of the most important things, basically a pitfall that we see in these type of policies, is that the goals for uptime and recovery must actually match the investment and the actions taken by the organization. For example, when I communicate with clients on this, they tend to tell me, I got to be back up in 4 hours. I can't have anything down longer than that. I'm losing money. That's fine. But they don't tend to take into account the financial cost and the productivity cost of actually investing in the technology that will get you back up in 4 hours from any kind of a disaster. Again, disaster recovery policies are typically scoped, right? Here in California, we're worried about fires and earthquakes, but in Oklahoma, they're worried about tornadoes. And in some other places with very sensitive government equipment, you might be worried about an actual attack. What you're protecting from and the money you spend to get yourself back up from that disaster must match. Frequently, we have to have conversations with stakeholders of organizations saying, Listen, if you're down for a day with your email or even two, is it really that bad? Do you want to spend $30,000 a month to have a completely separate email program or whatever else they're talking about? Do you want a completely separate building directly across the street because this one might burn down? Then you start to get a little bit more realistic recommendations and requests from the people when they have to spend the money. The last policy is the one you never want to use. It's really important to have, and that's your incident response policy. What happens if we get hacked? And this is where emotional decision making fails us the most. It's much more effective to decide ahead of time in a controlled environment, in a hypothetical situation, how you're going to respond to attack and who has the power to make decisions and where the money's going and what we're going to do in the event of this kind of an attack than it is to do it in situ at the moment. Nobody makes good decisions when you know a hacker has your data and is threatening to publish it online. Typically, these policies come with instructions on what we'll do and how we'll engage the insurance company and how we'll engage our either Endsight or the other IT organization. But they have two major statements that we put in the front of ours that are important. The first one is, in the event of a disaster, we are not going to give the IT company instructions to just bring us back up as soon as possible. That has the aforementioned problems of possibly letting the bad guy back in and frequently paying the ransom, but it also has the big problem where if you don't follow your insurance company's procedure, they may invalidate your claim, meaning you're on the hook for all of this. And the second one that we frequently do is we say, what are we going to do if we're extorted? We have lots of clients that have a fairly political or emotional stance on extortion. Many clients say, I will never negotiate with terrorists. End of story. You're trying to extort me. You're a foreign national. I will not pay. Some people say we have critical business here. If we lose data, if our data gets out on the dark web, people could be very much hurt. So we will always negotiate with attackers. Our least favorite answer, of course, is we'll see what happens, which never leads to the best decisions. It only happens when it's stressful. That type of a policy, the incident response policy, it's very, very useful to get done ahead of time. And it's one of the ones we test most commonly with our tabletop exercises where we sit in a room together and we say, this thing happened. How do we deal with it? It's a way to test your policies. Listen, Endsight also knows that these policies can be created with ChatGPT. You could go out right now and get them written, and they'd probably be decent. Ours have passed regulatory and insurance review several times. If this is useful to you, please reach out to us. You know I love talking about this kind of stuff, obviously, but your account manager at Endsight is willing to help, and we have lots of different templates that we can send to our clients for very nominal fee that will get you started. There's also several more types of policies I haven't touched on in this video. AI, written information security policies, travel policies, bring your own device policies, lots of them. We just think that disaster recovery, incident response, and acceptable use are the big three because that's the ones insurance companies ask for most. Thanks for taking the time to hang out with me. Stay safe out there.